Hello gamers, lizards, and glizzards. Aaron here, back with another video. It's been quite a while since we got our last Dendro main DPS unit, but it's finally time for another with KINICH, who's basically the complete opposite of Alhaitham. But how good is he? Where does he work best? Is he worth investing into at all? Before I answer those questions, I just have to say that if you do end up liking my content, why not take a bite out of that margarita cookie flavored subscribe button down below. Also note that for this video, I will mention the new Night Soul mechanics, what they are, and how they're utilized when they become relevant. Now with the begging done, let me start y'all off right with the overview. KINICH is a Dendro main DPS unit, but unlike most other Dendro units, he doesn't deal with Aggravate or Hyperbloom. Instead, he focuses on dealing large amounts of damage by buffing himself from the presence of burning. KINICH's skill allows him to enter the Night Soul state, which is a special state for Natlan characters that give them specific synergies. In this state, KINICH will gain a Night Soul meter to track his Night Soul points, which he gets passively while in the Night Soul state. If out of combat, KINICH's skill will have him perform a mid-air grapple that will propel him through the air. If an opponent is nearby, it will instead tether KINICH to the enemy, at which point he can rapidly rotate around the enemy in the direction of the player's choosing. In this state, when using a normal attack, KINICH will fire 2 damaging orbs at the target he's tethered to, and he will gain a small amount of Night Soul points. After getting the maximum amount of Night Soul points, he can cast his skill, which would consume all Night Soul points and fire a high damaging orb called a Scale Spiker Cannon at the enemy he's tethered to. His normal attack orbs and skill orbs each have different elemental ICDs, but they essentially boil down to once every 4 orbs on his normal attacks and once every cannon shot for his skill. Also, all of the damage he deals in this Night Soul state counts as elemental skill damage. KINICH's elemental burst has him summon a Pixel Dragon for 15 seconds that will deal rather low damage but will apply Dendro to enemies once every 2.5 seconds for a total of 6 times. KINICH's Ascension 1 passive applies the Desolation state to enemies once per 0.8 seconds. When enemies in the state take damage from burning or burgeon, KINICH gains a hefty amount of Night Soul points to the point where it will dramatically increase the rate at which he can fire his cannon shots. KINICH's Ascension 4 passive grants KINICH a stack with a max of 2 whenever Night Soul Burst is triggered. Night Soul Burst can be triggered once every so often when a Natlan character deals any kind of damage, and this cooldown will decrease when there are more Natlan characters in the party. For every stack of this passive, his next cannon shot will gain increased scaling. In terms of talent priority, most of KINICH's potential lies in his skill, so level that up before anything else, and crown it too. After that, you'll want to level his burst up a bit, but this thing is not super useful before C4, so don't worry about it too much. Then you can ignore his normal attacks, as you will usually never use them, and even if you do, it will not be for their damage. KINICH's combos are very simple. Use his burst if it's up. After that, use his skill to tether to an enemy and enter Night Soul Blessing. While in Night Soul Blessing, use 2 normal attacks and then a skill until it's over. Now with KINICH's base kit done, let's move on to his Constellations. KINICH's C1 increases the crit damage of his skill's cannon shot by 90% and also increases his movement speed by 20% for 5 seconds after using his skill out of combat. This leads to a rather decent overworld mobility boost and a relatively large damage increase. KINICH's C2 decreases the enemy's Dendro res by 30% when he hits them with his elemental skill, and it increases his cannon shots base scaling by 100%. Additionally, the radius of the cannon shots will be increased from 3 to 5. This will end up being an incredibly large damage increase to not only himself, but also to any potential Dendro ally on the team. On top of that, it increases his consistency against AoE content, as he will be much more likely to hit multiple enemies with his cannon shot. This constellation is powerful in every situation possible, making it his best. KINICH's C3 increases the level of his skill by 3. This will usually not be that large of a damage boost, but since KINICH scales incredibly hard with attack, it ends up increasing his damage by a rather significant amount. KINICH's C4 grants him 5 energy once per 2.8 seconds whenever he deals damage with his elemental skill. This allows him to build less energy recharge in order to burst every rotation, which actually turns out to be another good damage boost. KINICH's C5 increases the level of his burst by 3. However, the damage increase that this offers is rather low, which turns out to be the lowest damage increase he has in all of his constellations. KINICH's C6 allows his cannon shot to bounce to 1 extra enemy, dealing 700% of his attack while also retaining the damage bonuses that it might have. However, this damage is only achievable against AoE content, which is this constellation's main downside. With all the broken C6s we have now in the game, it's it's quite a shame that this one has a requirement to function, but on the upside, it does its AoE damage boosting job very well, and will lead to a massive damage increase in those situations while also allowing KINICH to function against multiple enemies. KINICH's Constellations are overall okay. His first few are very strong as they spike at his second, but after that, they steadily fall off in value until his C6, which is strong but only grants him value against AoE content. So I can only really recommend some sort of dolphin level investment into him if you really want to vertically invest. Though, because he is such a limited unit, I can't even recommend that. But with Constellations done, let's move on to KINICH's artifact options, where he has just a few of note. Obsidian Codex is the newest artifact set being added into the game, and it just so happens to be KINICH's best. This set grants a 15% damage bonus to the wielder if they are within the Night Soul Blessing state and are on field in the 2-piece. On top of that, it grants the wielder 40% crit rate for 6 seconds after the wielder consumes at least 1 Night Soul point. This is a ridiculous amount of incredibly powerful stats and will prove to be KINICH's best in slot by a mile. It's so strong that a decently invested 4-piece codex set can contend with any other artifact set with godlike investment. This is KINICH's go-to, and if you plan to use him, I recommend you go farm this set as soon as possible. Unfinished Reverie is the only other consistently good artifact option that KINICH has. The massive damage percent and decent attack boost it offers is incredibly strong. However, it's not as extraordinary as a decent damage percent buff and a crap ton of crit rate. The gap between these sets is so massive that switching to Reverie would result in a 10.5% TPS loss. For KINICH's stat priority, his main stats are the normal attack, damage, and crit, with a preference for crit damage and very little variance. His substat priority includes mostly the normal 1-to-2 crit ratio. Due to the Obsidian Codex set, this number can go quite high. Aim for no more than 60% crit rate without the set buff, and aim as high as possible in crit damage. After that, attack percent matters too, but should not be prioritized over an attack buffer. Just aim for 1.6 thousand attack at the bare minimum, though this should hopefully be higher. If using an attack buffer like recommended, it would be much more beneficial to build into some energy recharge in order to make his elemental bursts consistent. Aim for about 125 to 145% energy recharge in this case, but do note that prioritizing energy recharge instead of crit or attack in some cases is not worth it, as it will usually lead to a large damage decrease. For weapon options, KINICH's best is obviously his signature, the Fang of the Mountain King. The damage this thing offers is insane. It grants him the largest base attack that a weapon can offer, it grants him some crit rate, and it offers a 60% elemental skill and burst damage bonus after hitting enemies 6 separate times with elemental skill damage or when the burning or burgeon reaction is triggered. The pure amount of stats this thing offers is ridiculous. It will prove to be a massive damage boost to KINICH. In second, we have the claymore that everyone is freaking sick of already, the Serpent Spine. This weapon is and forever always will be overpowered due to the massive 50% all-type damage bonus and 27.56% crit rate it offers. Its only downside is the pretty low base attack it grants, which matters a lot for KINICH. Despite that, it will still be one of his best claymores available. Beacon of the Freed Sea is next due to the large attack and crit stats it offers. However, this weapon can be pretty inconsistent due to the attack buff requiring KINICH to take damage. Even when it max stacks, it's not better than Serpent Spine, which makes it kind of underwhelming for a weapon you cannot get anymore. Verdict is pretty similar to Beacon. It offers higher raw stats but requires a Geo unit for max benefit. When this requirement is met, it will be his second best option, but KINICH has a rough time with team compositions, which usually will not allow for many Geo units in his teams, leading Verdict to this spot. Wolf's Gravestone is also great for the attack buff while also buffing the team when he bursts the enemies down. This claymore is pretty good in that aspect and will probably be better in the future due to the addition of more non-snapshotting off-field units that scale with attack. Redhorn Stone Thresher is next, but it's only good for the crit damage. Song of Broken Pines is here for similar reasons, as it's only good for the attack. The Unforged is the last of the good 5-star options due to the large attack it offers. However, it will usually just be a worse version of Wolf's Gravestone, since KINICH will usually not want a shield. Earthshaker is the last weapon to mention, as it's his best in slot 4-star and free-to-play option. It offers a good base attack with attack percent and a 32% elemental skill damage bonus when a pyro-related reaction is triggered. KINICH makes use of all of these stats incredibly well, which is why this weapon can contend with some 5 stars for him. When it comes to synergies, KINICH does not have much going for him due to his need for large damage buffs, a pyro applicator, and a sub DPS. This is such an issue for him that the only real synergy KINICH has is with Emily. This is because they love to be a part of the same teams and they love going against single target content, plus Emily can apply Deepwood for KINICH if needed. If wailing, they both also offer Dendro resistance shredding for the other to use. If there is any sort of team-wide attack buffer and pyro applicator added into the game, then these two units will stick together like glue. However, at the moment, there is no unit like that. Instead, KINICH needs to choose between being massively buffed or using Emily, which isn't ideal. Despite that, Emily will be one of the best teammates KINICH has, and when mentioning team comps, this will be reflected. First up are KINICH's pure burning teams, which revolve around the large damage of 3 separate units, with most being buffed by Bennett. However, there is some versatility in the final slot where Emily is, as any Enemo or Geo unit can fit in here quite well as a substitute. Virgin teams also work well with KINICH due to the additional activation of the reaction from a Hydro unit, along with Xiangling's incredibly fast AoE attacks. On top of that, the use of Furina's massive damage percent bonus for the team, or Yolan's single target damage bonus, is incredibly good. Though if you are looking for a free-to-play option, Xingqiu can also work. But now with all that said and done, let's end off the video with the rating. KINICH's single target damage output is rather high. KINICH would be a 4.5 out of 5 on my scale if I just considered single target damage, but damage against mobs counts too. Other more single target oriented units can change targets rather easily, or they have random targeting, but KINICH has neither of these benefits. He slashed onto one enemy with nothing else of benefit, making him one of the most single target specific units in the game, somewhat on par with Yoimiya. This hurts his DPS potential against even the likes of 2 enemies, which other single target oriented units can deal with. This ends up lowering his damage potential to an average of a 4 out of 5. KINICH's application is tied to his AoEs too, and when considering it's only single target, you can expect this number will not be that high. While he might have his burst that can apply Dendro to enemies even when he's off field, it will only be active every other rotation without proper energy funneling and investment. All of this puts him at a 2 out of 5 on my application scale, making him one of the worst Dendro applicators in the game so far. For offensive utility, KINICH has none, nor does he work very well with any buffing artifact sets, so a 0 out of 5 seems fitting. In terms of battery potential, KINICH can generate a total of 5 Dendro particles on his first cannon shot. This is rather large, but he will almost never be paired with other Dendro units to battery, and even if he is paired with other Dendro units, he would never actually want to battery them due to his hyper carry focused kit, so I think I'll give him a below average 2 out of 5. Just like with offensive utility, KINICH has no defensive utility. However, he does swing around the enemy he's tethered to incredibly quickly. This hyper mobility should be enough mobility for him to avoid many damage instances he would take, but it's hard to tell without proper testing, so I will grant KINICH a 0.5 out of 5 for defensive utility. In terms of flexibility and versatility, KINICH is rather underwhelming. He can only work well in teams that can reliably use the burning reaction and any other reaction that can be triggered off of them. Even in those teams, he can only act as the main DPS. This unnecessary amount of restrictions is what I think earns him a 1.5 out of 5 here. While KINICH can be a strong damage dealing unit capable of potentially reaching new DPS heights against single target content, he offers way too little in many other aspects. He's as single target as Yoimiya, as niche and ally reliant as Nilo, and he offers as little utility as Navia does. KINICH lacks the versatility, tankiness, and supportive capabilities that Fontaine DPS like Weasley, Clorant, Arlecchino, and Nuvilet have, while only offering slightly more damage. This nets him a 1.5 out of 5 as of right now. That's not to say I think that KINICH is a terrible unit. He can still clear many chambers relatively easily, and that's what matters most. My main issue with him is that so can Weasley, Clorant, Arlecchino, Nuvilet, and any other supportive main DPS. At this point in Genshin's lifespan, I don't see much of a reason to pull for a unit that only deals single target damage when there's many other main DPS units that can clear just as fast while also offering utility to the team. However, there is one saving grace for KINICH. Due to his need for Pyro to be relevant and his desire for multiple Natlan characters on the team, he is the unit that will potentially have the largest boost in damage whenever the Pyro Archon is released. While that will not patch all of his issues, it will make him feel significantly better later on. But those are just my thoughts on KINICH. Now I want to hear yours. What do you think of KINICH? Do you plan to use him? How do you plan to build him? Do you think I'm neglecting something vital to his kit, or do you think I nailed his issues on the head? Tell me your thoughts down below. But with that, I will skedaddle. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you all next time. Bye bye!